In 2023, 1.4 billion US dollars was poured into Africa's entrepreneurial landscape by foreign investors, igniting a revolution in innovation. Now, you may think this is a big win for Africa. I think otherwise. In fact, I think this is a different form of colonization. I want us to explore the matter on this episode. So stay with us, stay tuned, we'll be right back. So before I tell you about startups and investments, I want to tell you a quick story that helped me with combing through this reality, that brought me to the front line, that forces me to refuse to wear the outfit because I really want to come to you on a personal level today. So about 4 years ago, after I got struck by a car, I decided that I was going to travel across Europe. I picked a dear friend. We decided to go together. Prior to our journey, we were talking about investment. And I told my friend, I said, listen, Tanzania, she's from Tanzania. I said, Tanzania has cheap lands, right? I said, you should start investing in the lands in your country. And my friend refused. She said she's not interested in that, right? Now, fast forward, we were in Santorini on our way to Rome. And we met a couple, they're from England, white couple from England. And then we, obviously after small talk, the couple decided to let us know that the best place to invest right now when it comes to land is where? Hey, you got it, Tanzania. So it brings me right back to the discussion that we have today, startups and investments, right? As of last year, 2023, 186 small businesses in Africa, or rather startups in Africa, secured about 1.4 billion US dollars. But this was not given to them by the African government. It was given to them by foreigners, foreign investors. And if you know this already, right? If you know this a little bit or you understand business a little bit, at least for me, the things I remember from business classes are whoever invests in your business, those people have a big stake in that business, right? You don't really have a say when someone has invested 40%, 50%, 60, 70, 80% into your business. And so that brings me right back to Africa's future and her ownership. Like, who owns us as a people? When you look at these little startups usually are done by Africans who are looking to answer some of Africa's biggest issues, right? So that's how startups are created. But if we don't own these startups, then what happens to our future as Africans? And so when I began to come through this, again, it takes me right back to the beginning of how this all bullshit started. Excuse my French. But it started with this, right? We begin with looting of our resources by Europeans, right? That began, and then we went from looting to slave trade, right? Where again, our resources and our people are being taken out of the continent. And also we sold our people too, we should also put that out there. And then we moved from that to how all of these different factors underdeveloped the continent itself, right? And now we move from that to we working in agriculture. We move from that to what we have today, right? I'm jumping a whole lot, but what we have right now is technology. In every part of the world, technology is growing. And then that brings us right back to startups, right? But the gist is this. There are different startups across the continent of Africa. Many of these things are not golden phenomenon. For example, I want to give you a brief example with Floating Waves, which is like a payments app where people can transfer money, or it's kind of like a Western Union or a MoneyGram, right? This is not a golden phenomenon. We have this over and over. These new investors won't pour their money into old companies because obviously when you look at old companies, they already have their structure already. And it's like you wanting to parent an adult than parenting a child. It's easier to parent a child, right? So they would pour their money into startups. But again, these startups are not owned by Africans when foreign investors are pouring money into them. So it brings me back to the future of Africa. It brings me back to Africa's economy. It brings me back to Africa's development. It brings me back to the notion that money are not being poured into Africa's youth, right? And when I think about neo-colonialism, which is a different form of colonization I mentioned to you when I began this episode, right? You know, back then, when you look about slavery, everything was so aggressive, right? You know, they came in and they stole, and they almost destroyed us. I mean, they did destroy our economy. To this day, we can't find our balance as a continent, right? But also, this time around, it is very subtle, very, very gently done, right? It is more systematic, right? When you think about neo-colonialism, that means they control us economically, but certainly, right? They control us politically and also culturally as well. So what can we do, or how can we help ourselves? I don't even know what questions to ask at this point. Get out of where we are. And my own view is that the only way that can happen is when African leaders can really pull back into its own people. That's when we can take the ownership, or at least be in charge of our own future, right? Now, it sounds like I'm bluffing. I'm not. I'm just being, this is just my way of just expressing the future of the continent and what I see. And I also want to share with you that the 3 countries that are actually receiving a lot of money from investors right now are Kenya, South Africa, as well as Nigeria. These are the 3 big places where the tech companies are blooming. So I'm going to leave it here because, I can go on for hours, but I think this is a nice place to end this. But again, without my leaving you with a question would be as if I haven't said anything. Do you think I am over-exaggerating when I say that investors in Africa is a different form of colonization? Now, I am not saying that people shouldn't invest in Africa. What I'm saying is that to have a huge amount of money being poured into Africa's startups, it simply means that Africa has no control over what their ideas are, over their own company, over how they run their own businesses. That is kind of scary. It is not reversed, So I'm going to open this up, as I always do, to a dynamic discussion, one that is healthy and one that is conversational as to Africa's future when it comes to startups. Do you think I'm over-exaggerating, or do you think I'm on the right track when it comes to this type of matter? So share your thoughts below. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you again next time in a cute outfit. Stay tuned for a great story.